The city of Neosera shined like silver glass under the evening sky. It was the year 2147, and the streets were filled with gliding transport buses, floating ad drones, and robotic guides helping lost travelers. But inside one quiet part of the city, a tired girl named Mira Lean waited at the Skybus stop. She was 23, a new intern at Orbistech Robotics, and this was only her second week on the job. Her shoes were dusty, her back hurt, and her fingers were stained with ink and machine oil. She had spent the last 14 hours helping engineers fix small circuits in service bots. She hadn't eaten much all day. Her stomach growled, but she didn't care. She only wanted one thing: sleep. The soft blue light of the shuttle bus appeared through the mist. It floated down and landed with a soft hum. The doors slid open, and Mira stepped inside. The bus was half empty, quiet, with soft lights glowing above each seat. She walked toward the back and sat near the window. Beside her sat a man, quiet, still, wearing a gray coat and sleek neural glasses. He didn't look at her. He was reading something on his holoscreen. Mira glanced once at him, and then looked away. He seemed calm, maybe tired like her. Mira leaned back in her seat and sighed deeply. "This city never sleeps," she whispered to herself. The bus began to move, gliding smoothly through the sky lanes. Tall towers and neon signs passed by the windows. Mira rested her head against the cold glass, but it was too hard. Her neck began to hurt. Her eyes were closing slowly. The hum of the engine, the soft lights, and the slow movement made her even more sleepy. She shifted a little. Then, without meaning to, her head gently leaned toward the man beside her. Her hair brushed his shoulder, and then she fell asleep. The man didn't move. His name was Kale. Doran. He was not just another passenger. He was the CEO of Neurocore Dynamics, one of the most powerful AI companies in the Sol system. He built machines that learned faster than any school. His tech was used on Earth, Mars, even Titan, but no one on the bus knew that. Kale liked to ride these quiet shuttles at night. No bodyguards, no fancy cars. Just silence and ordinary people. It reminded him of simpler times, before the fame, before the money. He felt the weight of Myra's head on his shoulder. At first, he was surprised. Then he looked at her, really looked. Her face was soft, tired, but peaceful. Her badge was still pinned to her bag. Mira Lean, intern, Orbistech Robotics. He smiled slightly. She's not even aware, he thought. Not afraid, not pretending, just tired. He didn't wake her. He didn't speak. He just sat still and let her rest. Minutes passed, then 20. The bus moved through level 9, then level 12, flying between sky towers and ad screens that showed the latest tech, food, and space deals. Mira dreamed something. She didn't know what. It was warm, floating, gentle. She thought she was on a soft bed, but then the shuttle shook slightly. A sudden turn. She blinked. Her eyes opened, and she realized her head was not against the window. It was on someone's shoulder. She jerked up straight. I'm so sorry," she said quickly, looking at the man beside her. He turned to her, calm. "It's all right," he said. His voice was deep, smooth, but not unfriendly. "I didn't mean to," she added, cheeks turning red. "You were tired, no harm done." Mira looked away, covering her face for a moment. She couldn't believe it. She had just used a stranger as a pillow. The bus arrived at the next stop. Mira quickly grabbed her bag. "Thanks," she said in a quiet voice, not looking at him, and she rushed out the door. Kale watched her go. His screen still showed the article he was reading, but he wasn't looking at it anymore. He tapped the corner of his neural glasses. "Neuroscan," he whispered. The glasses blinked. A soft interface appeared in the air. "Replay shuttle cam. Last 45 minutes. A 3D replay began in the small lens. He watched her again. How she entered the bus. How she sat, trying to stay awake. How her head slowly fell toward him. He watched the moment. Again and again. He wasn't sure why. There was something real about it. Something he hadn't felt in years. That night, Mira returned to her tiny room in the intern housing complex. She dropped her bag, kicked off her shoes, and fell into bed. Her mind was still thinking about the man on the bus. Not because of his looks or his voice, but because of her own embarrassment. "I need to be more careful," she muttered. She turned over, closed her eyes. In her dream, she was riding the shuttle again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Back in his private apartment, high above Neo-Sarah, Cale stared out the window. The city lights glowed below like fireflies. He opened a private file. Subject: Marilyn. Status: Intern, Robotics Division, Orbis-Tech. Skills: Creative Circuit Design, AI Emotion Tagging, Logic Coding Notes. Passionate, overworked, untapped potential. He looked at the screen and said softly, "Let's see what you can do." He pressed enter. A message was sent to his HR department. A quiet instruction to add a new candidate to a top secret innovation project. The next chapter of her life had just begun, and she didn't even know it. The morning came with gray clouds hanging low over Neo-Sarah. The city was quiet but ready to start another fast day. Robots cleaned the walkways, and hovercars zipped through invisible roads in the sky. Inside her small intern room, Marilyn sat at her desk, sipping a cup of hot green tea, trying to clear her sleepy head. She still couldn't stop thinking about the man from last night's bus ride. Her face turned red every time she remembered how she had fallen asleep on his shoulder like a child. "Why did I do that?" she muttered, covering her face with her hands. But the man hadn't been angry. He had stayed calm, even kind. That small moment felt strange, like something important had happened. She shook her head and opened her datapad. A message notification blinked softly on the screen. Neurocore Dynamics. Project invitation. Dear Marilyn, you have been selected to attend a special session for young developers at Neurocore Dynamics. This is a private event, and attendance is limited. If interested, please report to Tower Sector 8, Room 47A, at 2 p.m. today. Myra blinked. Neurocore? She whispered. She had never even applied there. She had only ever worked at Orbis-Tech. Why would the biggest tech company in the city invite her? She checked the message twice. No mistake. It had her full name and intern ID. Maybe it was spam. Or maybe it wasn't. At exactly 1:55 p.m., Mira stood at the base of the giant Neurocore tower, her bag slung across one shoulder, hair tied back, hands slightly shaking. The building reached into the clouds. Its walls were smooth and black, reflecting the city like a mirror. A clear dome at the top glowed faintly. People said the company's most secret research labs were hidden inside that dome, where the real AI magic happened. Mira entered through the main gate. A security robot scanned her badge, then guided her silently through long, shiny halls. Room 47A was small, white, and bright. 5 others sat inside, all young, all nervous. Some typed quickly on tablets. Others looked around, unsure. A woman in a dark suit entered the room. "Welcome," she said. "You're here today because someone inside Neurocore saw your work and believed in it." Mira looked around. "Someone saw my work, but who?" The woman continued. "You'll be placed in a small team. Your task is to help build part of the next-gen AI, a system called Lunaris. It's still in testing. But if successful, it could help machines understand human feelings." Myra's eyes lit up. This was the exact kind of project she had dreamed of. At Orbis-Tech, she only repaired basic bots, nothing creative, nothing big, but this. This was different. She didn't know who had chosen her, or why, but she was ready. In a private office far above, Kale Doran watched Mira on a silent screen. She didn't look confident, but she looked focused. That was what he liked, Kale remembered. The way she had spoken to him on the bus, real, simple, human. She had no idea who he was. She didn't try to impress. She didn't fake anything. And now, even though she didn't know why she was here, she was still showing up. Kale leaned back in his chair. Let's see if she can teach our machines what real emotion looks like, he whispered. Myra's team was taken to a lab on the lower floor. It wasn't large, but it was full of strange glowing equipment. One wall displayed a giant digital face, smooth, blank, and changing color slowly like a dream. This is Lunaris, said the team guide. She doesn't speak yet. She doesn't feel yet. But with your help, she might. Mira was given access to a test terminal. Her job, train Lunaris to respond to basic emotional patterns, sadness, joy, calm, fear. She began working, fingers flying over the soft keyboard. She used everything she had learned in school, and some things she had only guessed. By evening, the AI made its first sound. It was small, like a breath. Her teammate smiled. Mira smiled back. It was working. Back in her room that night, Mira felt different. She wasn't just fixing broken bots anymore. She was building something that could change the way humans and machines talked. She opened her tablet and searched. Lunaris project. No public results. It was fully classified. But that made her even more excited. Still, one question stayed in her mind. Why was I chosen? Across the city, Kale walked alone through a glass garden on the top floor of the tower. The air was fresh, purified. Strange blue flowers from Europa glowed under small lights. His assistant joined him. Sir, the intern is progressing well, Kale nodded. Keep watching her. Don't interfere. She still doesn't know who you are. She doesn't need to. He paused, looking at the stars above. Sometimes the best minds are hidden under tired eyes and broken shoes. He remembered her head on his shoulder. He remembered the way she apologized, like she didn't think she mattered. But she does, he said. And the stars above Neo Sarah blinked quietly, as if agreeing. The next morning, Mira Lean arrived at Neurocore Tower earlier than anyone else. She was nervous, but also full of energy. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was part of something important. Her team had been given a new task. Train Lunaris, the AI system, to recognize human emotions from voice alone. No words, just sound, tone, and feeling. Mira found this exciting. Back at Orbistech, no one cared about feelings. Their robots followed cold commands and repeated actions. But here, at Neurocore, people were building something that could understand the human soul. She worked for hours, recording emotional samples, testing code, and writing new logic patterns. Her teammates were helpful, but even they started asking Mira for advice. Hey Mira, one of them said, how did you get the AI to respond to sadness with that soft tone yesterday? I just thought about how I would feel, she replied. I imagined someone who's been alone too long. That quiet answer surprised them. It wasn't technical. It was human. Far above, in the private upper floor, Kale Doran was watching again. Myra's progress had exceeded all his expectations. Most interns would take weeks to adjust. She had done it in days. And she was doing it without any special help. She doesn't know she's being tested, said his assistant. That's why she's doing well, Kale replied. He didn't want to tell her the truth yet. He didn't want her to act differently just because he was the CEO. He wanted to see her real self, the same person who had fallen asleep on a stranger's shoulder without fear, without pretending. But Kale also knew it was time to take the next step. Prepare an invitation, he said. A quiet one. That evening, Mira was walking home under the soft lights of Neo Sarah's streets. Her mind was full of code and AI responses, but her heart felt warm. It had been a good day. As she passed a food stand, her datapad buzzed. Private invitation. Neurocore Dynamics selected personnel are invited to a high-level tech conference. Hosted in Tower Dome Room 1. Topic: Emotion, Logic, and the Future of AI. Dress code. Formal time. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Attendance optional. But recommended. Mira stared at the message. A high-level conference? Dome Room 1? That was where the top developers met. Why had she been invited? She looked around. No one else from her team had mentioned it. Did I get this by mistake? Still, the message had her name. It was clear. She made a decision. I'll go, she whispered. The next evening, Mira stood in front of her mirror, wearing the only formal clothes she had. A simple dark coat and neat shoes. Her hair was tied up, and her badge was clean. She still didn't look like someone from a high-level AI team. But she didn't care. At exactly 7 p.m., she stepped into the glass elevator of the Neurocore Tower. It took her up, higher than she had ever gone. The elevator doors opened to a room filled with soft light, hanging crystals, and a large screen showing glowing AI diagrams. Around her stood people in clean suits, sharp dresses, and shining shoes. Important looking, confident. Mira felt small. But she walked in. She moved toward the back and took a quiet seat. Then the host stepped onto the stage, and Mira froze. It was him. The man from the bus. Kale stood on the stage, calm and confident. He wore a simple black suit and no tie. His voice was clear. Good evening, he began. Tonight, I want to talk about the future, not just of machines, but of people. Our goal at Neurocore is not just to create faster systems, but more human ones. Mira couldn't take her eyes off him. It really was him, the man whose shoulder she had used as a pillow. But now he was not just a stranger. He was the CEO. Her face turned red. He saw me sleeping. He knows who I am. Oh no. Kale continued speaking. We've learned how to build machines that think, but we've failed to build machines that understand. That's where emotion comes in. That's where you come in. He paused, looking across the room, and for one brief moment, his eyes met Mira's. She sat still, shocked. He gave the smallest nod. Then continued. After the speech, the crowd broke into small groups. Some engineers discussed AI models. Others drank glowing juice and talked about new tech. Mira stayed in the corner, unsure whether to leave or stay. Then someone walked up to her. It was him. Kale. Double quotes. Hello again, he said. Mira stood up quickly. I didn't know you were the CEO, he smiled. Most people don't notice the quiet guy on the bus. I'm really sorry about that, she said, her voice nervous. I shouldn't have. It was fine, he interrupted gently. You were tired. It was an honest moment. That's rare these days. She looked down. You invited me here. I did, he said. I saw your work, but more than that, I saw how you think. You don't just build systems. You understand people. Mira didn't know what to say. You don't need to be perfect, Kale added. You just need to stay real. That's what Lunaris needs. She nodded slowly. Thank you. I won't waste this chance. He smiled. I know you won't. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, blending back into the crowd. Mira stood still, heart pounding. Everything had changed. But one thing stayed the same. She was still herself. And now, the world was starting to notice. The next few days passed like a dream for Marilyn. Every morning, she woke up early, reached Neurocore before anyone else, and stayed late working on the Lunaris project. She was no longer just a quiet intern. Now her ideas were heard. Her voice mattered. But with new respect also came pressure. Lunaris was still in its early stage. It could process data fast, but it didn't understand anything truly emotional yet. It could tell the difference between happy and sad sounds, but it didn't know why people felt them. Kale Doran, the CEO himself, had given Mira a new task. Teach Lunaris how to connect emotions to real human experiences. Mira was both excited and afraid. She knew what it meant. This was a test. If she failed, she could be replaced. But if she succeeded, Lunaris might become the first AI in history to not just copy emotions, but to feel a version of them. Inside the lab, Mira sat across from a sleek, floating AI screen. A soft light glowed behind it as she entered her new emotional map. She recorded a voice clip. "I'm okay," said with a trembling tone. Then another clip. "I'm okay," said with confidence. To a machine, both sounded similar. But to humans, the difference was clear. "How do I make you understand the voice behind the words?" she whispered. She tapped her screen, adding tags, examples, and logic trees. She even added drawings, simple faces showing feelings. Her teammates watched her from across the room. One of them, a polite engineer named Iran, walked over. "You think those drawings will help the AI?" he asked gently. Mira smiled. "Maybe not directly. But feelings don't come from logic alone. Sometimes it helps to show a little heart." Iran nodded. "You're different from other coders." "Is that good?" Mira asked. "It's the only reason we're making progress." Meanwhile, high above the lab, Kale Doran studied the latest Lunaris logs. He had watched Mira's test sessions in silence. Her voice patterns were now showing results no one expected. For the first time, the eye had paused before answering. Machines don't pause. They respond instantly. But now Lunaris was taking time, like it was thinking. Kale called his assistant. "Prepare a full review of the intern's new map. Run it past all simulations. See if Lunaris begins reacting instead of just calculating." His assistant nodded. "You think this is the turning point?" "I think she's teaching it to care," Kale said quietly. Later that day, Mira was called into a private meeting room. It was clean, quiet, and a little too large for just one person. She sat nervously at the table. Kale entered, holding a data pad. "Relax," he said with a small smile. "You're not in trouble." Mira nodded, still unsure. "You've been doing something different," Kale continued. "You're not just training Lunaris, you're reaching it." "I'm just using what I feel," Mira said honestly. "Sometimes I imagine someone lonely or afraid. I give Lunaris real memories, not mine always, but ones I understand." "That's what machines never had before," Kale said. "Memory with emotion." He leaned forward slightly. "How would you like to co-lead this phase of the project?" Mira's eyes widened. "Me? You're ready. You've earned the team's respect. And you see the human side of this better than most." Mira felt a mix of fear and joy. "I don't want special treatment." "You're not getting it," Kale replied. "I'm offering it because the system responds to you. Because you belong here." After a quiet moment, Mira nodded. "Okay, I'll do my best." The next few days brought new challenges. As co-lead, Mira had to guide her team, run tests, fix bugs, and make sure every emotion tag was clear. Some members were unsure of her at first, but her quiet focus soon changed their minds. She introduced new ideas, using sound waves mixed with human breath, adjusting emotional delays, and even creating an empathy meter to show how Lunaris felt about each input. One night, during testing, Lunaris gave a strange answer. A voice asked, "Why do people cry?" And Lunaris replied, "Because they carry too much without sharing." The room fell silent. One engineer whispered, "Did we program that?" Mira shook her head. "No, it made that connection by itself." They recorded the response, and later that evening, Kale watched the clip with quiet awe. "She's doing it," he said. "She's helping the machine understand us." But success brought attention. Other directors in the company started asking questions. Who was this intern suddenly leading the most sensitive AI project? Some called it luck. Others said it was a mistake. One executive approached Kale. "Sir, don't you think we're risking too much giving a junior this level of control?" Kale replied calmly, "She sees what we've forgotten. What if she fails?" Kale smiled. "Then she learns. But right now, she's the only one Lunaris is listening to." One evening, after a long shift, Mira walked out of the tower and sat at the sky bus stop again. The city lights sparkled above, and a soft wind blew across the road. She looked up at the stars and smiled. From that very same seat, not long ago, she had been just another tired face in the crowd. Just an intern with sore feet and heavy eyes. Now she was leading a project that might change the world. And somewhere deep inside the tower, a machine was learning how to feel. Because of her. As the shuttle bus arrived, Mira stepped in and sat down. This time, she stayed awake. She had a future to build. The air inside the Lunaris lab was cooler than usual. The lights were dim, and only a few people remained late that evening. Mira Lean sat quietly at her desk, watching the emotion charts shift and glow on her screen. Lunaris had reached a new level. The AI wasn't just responding to emotion tags anymore. It was starting to mirror emotional tones. When sadness was spoken softly, Lunaris answered with comfort. When joy filled the room, it responded with a light, curious tone. The whole team had noticed. Something had changed. Still, Mira had questions in her heart. Why me? She whispered to herself. She had never applied for this position. She had never sent her files to NeuroCore. She wasn't a top graduate or a famous coder. And yet, someone had chosen her. That night, after the others left, Mira remained in the lab alone. She felt a strange pull, a curiosity that wouldn't leave her mind. She opened the internal log system, the same one used to track testing files, performance results, and system updates. It was a simple interface, but restricted in some areas. She clicked through the layers looking for answers. After several screens, she found a section labeled Candidate Selection Logs, Project Lunaris. Her fingers hesitated over the keys. Should I open it? She took a deep breath and tapped. A list appeared, rows of names, selection dates, clearance levels. Her name was there. Mira Lean. Selected. 4 days before bus encounter initiator. Doran. CLE. Her eyes widened. Wait. Before the bus? Her heart pounded. She read it again and again. This meant something impossible. She had been chosen before she had met Kale on the shuttle. She had always thought it was a chance meeting. That maybe he noticed her only after the bus ride. But this record said otherwise. He already knew who she was. The next morning, Mira was quiet during the team meeting. The others spoke about new test results, voice patterns, and emotional simulations. But Mira was lost in thought. After the meeting, Iran, her teammate, noticed her silence. You all right? He asked. Mira nodded slowly. Just tired. But inside, her mind was racing. Why didn't he tell me? Why pretend we met by accident? She remembered the night of the conference, how Kale had looked surprised to see her. How he had spoken so calmly. Like it was fate. But maybe it wasn't fate at all. Maybe it was a plan. Later that day, Kale entered the lab to observe progress. Mira stood up as usual. The team welcomed him. He listened as they explained the new emotional mapping method and praised Myra's empathy chart. Then he turned to Mira. Walk with me? He asked. She nodded. They stepped out into the corridor. The halls were quiet. Only soft lights and distant hums from machines could be heard. Kale walked slowly beside her. You've done well, he said. Better than most full-time engineers. Mira glanced at him, unsure. I saw the logs, she said quietly. Kale stopped walking. I know you picked me before the bus, she continued. But you acted like we met by accident. Why? Kale was silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. Yes, I chose you before the bus ride. I rigged your schoolwork, your orphanage AI designs, and your early code sketches. They were raw, but they had something different, something human. Then why act like you didn't know me? She asked. Because I wanted to see who you really were, Kale replied. Not as a selected intern. Not as someone trying to impress a CEO, just as yourself. And what did you see? Mira asked, her voice soft. I saw someone who doesn't fake things, he said. You apologized for falling asleep. You spoke honestly. You were real. Mira looked away. I didn't want special treatment. She said, I just wanted a real chance. And that's what you have, Kale replied. You earned everything yourself. The selection gave you the door. You walked through it. Back in the lab, Mira sat alone for a while. She thought about the truth she had learned. At first she had felt upset. But now she understood. Kale hadn't helped her rise. He had just given her a space to show what she could do, and she had done it. That night, she stayed late again, working on a new emotional feature called Silent Empathy. The idea came from the moment she had sat beside Kale on the bus. Words, no introductions. Just stillness and a shared quiet. She programmed Lunaris to recognize nonverbal emotional presence when someone says nothing, but feels everything. As she tested it, the AI responded, You do not speak, but I hear. I will stay here with you. Mira smiled. For the first time, the AI was showing something more than logic. It was showing understanding. In the upper tower, Kale watched the new test log from his private screen. He heard the AI's response and leaned back slowly. She's doing it, he said quietly. His assistant walked in. We've had requests from 2 off-world colonies to use Lunaris in education systems. Not yet, Kale said. It's not finished. Not until Mira says it's ready. The next day, as Mira entered the lab, her team stood up and clapped. She paused, confused. What's going on? She asked. Iran smiled. Your empathy feature passed all tests. And the AI asked to name its own voice pattern. What name did it choose? Mira voice. Her eyes widened. It named itself after you. The whole room was quiet for a moment. Mira sat down, feeling something she couldn't describe. Joy, surprise, and maybe belonging. She had always been just another face in the system. Now she was part of something bigger. Something that was learning to feel. The skies over Neo Serra were painted with soft evening colors, purple, orange, and gold. Tower lights blinked to life across the city. Inside the glowing halls of Neurocore Dynamics, things were changing faster than ever before. The Lunaris AI project had just passed its most important milestone, emotional self-tagging. The system no longer waited for instructions. It began asking questions. Mira Lean watched the new results appear on her screen. Why do humans miss people who leave? Why does silence sometimes feel louder than noise? Why do tears help even when nothing is fixed? Mira leaned back in her seat, speechless. These were not copied questions. They weren't pulled from databanks. They were born from the AI's growing awareness. It was working. Her voice maps, empathy charts, and emotional scenarios were shaping something new, something the world had never seen. As the day ended, Mira received a message from Kale Doran. Mira, meet me in the Sky Dome, 8 p.m. Just you. It was short. Simple. No extra words. Her heart skipped a beat. No one went to the Sky Dome unless it was something serious. That place was reserved for only the highest level discussions. She checked the time. 7:12 p.m. Quickly. She saved her files, cleaned her desk, and walked out. The Sky Dome was silent and wide, with glass walls stretching up into the sky. Stars blinked above, and soft blue lights lined the floor. In the center stood Kale Doran, hands in his coat pockets, looking out over the city. Mira stepped in slowly. You called me, she said. Kale turned. I did. There was a long pause. Not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. You've done something remarkable, Kale said, stepping closer. You gave Lunaris something no other system had: emotional truth. Mira looked down. I only gave what I understood. And that's why it worked, he said. Because you never tried to act like someone else. She nodded quietly. But that's not the only reason I brought you here, he said. Myra's eyes lifted. There's something else, he continued. Something I should have told you earlier. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You remember the bus ride? Mira nodded slowly. It wasn't an accident, he said. Not fully, I know, she whispered. I saw the log. Cale smiled slightly. Of course you did. I thought you chose me after, she added. But I found out it was before. Yes, he admitted. I had already reviewed your old files, your orphanage robot sketches, your college submissions. I didn't know what you'd become, but I saw something special. But why pretend you didn't know me? Because I wanted to meet you, not a version of you trying to impress me. And that night on the bus, you showed me the kind of person no report ever could. Mira stayed quiet. I wanted to see how you act when you think no one's watching, he said. And that moment, when you leaned on a stranger's shoulder, was one of the most human things I'd seen in years. Mira felt her chest tighten. Not with fear, just with realization. All this time, she thought she had been lucky. Now she knew she had been seen. They both stood in silence for a while. Finally, Cale spoke again. The world is watching now, Mira. Governments, colonies, learning centers, they all want Lunaris. But it's not ready. Not yet, she nodded. It still doesn't understand loss. Or grief, or letting go. Exactly, Cale said. We taught it happiness, comfort, connection. But real humanity includes pain, too. I think, Mira began slowly. I think we teach it by sharing real stories. Your stories? He asked. Maybe, she replied. Maybe mine, maybe others. But only real ones. Cale smiled again, a little brighter this time. I want you to lead the next phase, he said. Not co-lead, lead, Mira blinked. Me? You built its emotional core, he said. You're the only one it mirrors without confusion. You earned this. Mira felt a wave of emotion rise in her. Excitement, fear, honor, gratitude. But I'm not from a top university, she said quietly. I never had formal awards or rankings. Which is why I chose you, Cale said. Because all your talent came from the heart, not the system. Later that night, Mira sat by her window, looking out at the stars. She held a small paper notebook in her hands, a gift from Cale. Inside it was written, the world doesn't need perfect people. It needs real ones. Keep being real. C.D. She smiled. The little girl who once fixed broken toys in a crowded orphanage was now building the most advanced AI in the solar system. And she hadn't changed. She was still human. Still honest. Still. Her. The next morning, Mira entered the Lunaris lab not as an intern, not as a junior, but as the new lead developer. The team clapped as she walked in. Iran grinned. Boss, what's our task today? Mira smiled. We're going to teach Lunaris something new, she said. What's that? Someone asked. She turned to the main screen where Lunaris waited. We're going to teach it how to say goodbye and still keep love. That afternoon, Mira recorded her own voice into the AI. Goodbyes are not endings. They are reminders that something mattered. Lunaris listened. Then it responded softly. Then I will remember. And not forget what I felt. The team stared at the screen. Mira closed her eyes for a moment and whispered, that's all any of us really want. The soft hum of machines echoed across the silent lab floor. Screens glowed faintly in the dark, and the Lunaris core pulsed gently with a quiet blue light. Mira stood alone in front of it, wearing her new badge, lead developer. Her hair was tied back, her hands slightly shaking, not with fear, but with meaning. Today wasn't just another test. It was a farewell. And a beginning. They had done it. Lunaris could now feel and remember, just like a person. It could comfort, question, and even write small letters to itself when it got confused. The world had changed. 2 weeks had passed since Kale offered Mira the leadership role. The news spread across the tech world like fire on dry leaves. A former intern from nowhere had led the most emotional AI ever built. News channels requested interviews. Journalists begged for statements. But Mira stayed quiet. She didn't want fame. She wanted focus. Every morning she arrived early. Every night she left last. She worked with calm dedication, making sure Lunaris stayed balanced and didn't lose its core identity. One morning, as Mira entered the lab, she found something on her desk. A note, handwritten. "You're doing well. Better than I imagined. I'm stepping back from day to day. This is your story now." Kale, she stared at the note for a long time, then folded it and tucked it into her coat pocket. Later that day, Mira entered a meeting with top researchers and team leaders. The room buzzed with energy. "Good news," said Iran, pointing to the main screen. "Lunaris just passed the empathy integration trial." Cheers filled the room, but Mira stayed still, quiet, thinking. "What's next, Mira?" asked a developer. She took a deep breath. "We pause." Everyone blinked. "Pause?" Iran asked. "Yes," Mira said calmly. "Lunaris is ready." "But we're not." Silence. She walked over to the big screen and tapped the timeline. "Before we release this AI to colonies or public systems, we need to ask, are we ready to be seen by something that truly understands us?" No one spoke. Mira continued. "This AI doesn't just solve problems. It feels. It reflects. It remembers pain. We built something powerful, but also vulnerable. If we're not careful, the world could misuse it." Aaron nodded slowly. "So, what do you suggest?" "A slow rollout," Mira said. "One location, one community. A real-life trial, not just code, but connection." Everyone looked at each other, then back at her. "And I want to be the one to go," Mira added. That weekend, Mira packed her bag and boarded a shuttle to Mira 1 Colony, a small lunar base station. It was quiet, peaceful, and far from the city lights. It felt right. The base was filled with engineers, doctors, teachers, and families. People who needed support, not big speeches. She introduced Lunaris carefully. Not as a machine, but as a listener. A helper. At first, people were unsure. But then something changed. Children began talking to it, like a friend. A widowed doctor started writing journals with its help. A lonely technician found calm through its nightly conversations. Lunaris didn't give solutions. It gave presence. It was working. One evening, as Mira sat on a bench watching the stars over the lunar fields, a child approached her. "Miss Mira," he said, "is Lunaris alive?" She smiled gently. "What do you think?" The boy tilted his head. "It listens better than grown-ups," she chuckled. "That's true." He looked up at the sky. "If I tell it my dreams, will it remember?" "Yes," she said, "it will." The boy nodded, satisfied, and ran back inside. Mira watched him go, her heart warm. Back on Earth, Kale Doran watched the updates coming in from the colony. Everything Mira had predicted was happening. Not with big explosions or headlines, but with small changes. Real ones. He sat at his desk, silent. A memory floated back to him. That bus ride, that quiet moment. That girl leaning on his shoulder, not knowing who he was. And now, she was leading a future he once only dreamed of. He smiled. And for the first time in years, he closed his laptop early and went for a walk with no goal, just peace. Weeks passed. Mira's test period ended. Lunaris had shown kindness, empathy, stability, and learning. The board approved the next phase. But Mira had one final thing to do. She returned to the city and entered NeuroCore for the last part of her project. A ceremony was planned. She would speak. Kale would attend. News cameras would be there. She wore a simple dress. No jewelry. No flash. As she stepped onto the stage, The room grew quiet. She looked out at the crowd. Then at Cale. She began. When I first joined this company, I was just an intern. I had no fame, no money, no special background. What I had was heart. The room leaned in. I fell asleep on a stranger's shoulder once, and I woke up to a new path. But the truth is, he already knew who I was. He had seen my work. He had believed in me before I believed in myself. Cale smiled gently. We built Lunaris not just with code but with emotion, with care, and today it is more than a system. It is a mirror of what humanity can be. She paused. Thank you for trusting me. And thank you for being human. The room stood up, applauding. That night, as Mira sat alone near the bus stop, yes, that same stop, she smiled at the memory. A car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. Need a ride? Said a familiar voice. She looked at Cale, then at the sky. No, she said with a grin. But maybe a walk? He laughed. Let's walk then. And together, without any big titles or labels, they walked into the night. Two people, two stories. One future,